Kia ora tātou. Mihi mai koutou ki ngā whānui. Mihi mai mo te tautoko te kaupapa. Ki ngā mahi mo ngā whānui o Turanga me te Tairāwhiti. Kia ora tātou. Ko Reweti Ropiha hau. Ngai tamanu heri me rongo whakāta o ku iwi. Turanga nui a kiwa toku kāinga. Te hauoro Turanga nui a kiwa toku mahi. Kia ora tātou. Thanks, Sam. I'll just sort of just touch myself after all those fantastic sort of words that sort of she's translated, but very good. Look, with further ado, I'll jump straight into the kaupapa that I'll talk to today. First things first, I'll translate for of us who may not be in the know about Turanga Health. Turanga Health, set up in 1996. The three iwi of Turanga Nui a Kiwa, Ngai Tamana Hiri Rongo Whakāta and Tautanga Mahaki, back in that time, had the foresight to set up a company, $100 each, to establish who we are and what we represent today. Their insight and their intention was that we would have an approach that embodied this notion of mauri ora, or well-being, and that our sweet spot would be in the homes and would be in the communities. A different proposition from a 15-minute consult with a GP, and a different proposition from a bed night being utilised in a hospital sort of setting. So our whole sort of sweet spot is all about who we are and what we translate to live in the centre of the universe, called Turanga Nui a Kiwa, called Gisborne. Anyway, what can you expect from myself today in the next sort of 12 minutes? You'll get an insight into the why, the when, the how, the who of a Turanga Health response to the two tumultuous events that unfortunately struck our district, the COVID pandemic and the cyclone, Gabriel cyclone. So I'll traverse that sort of space. Before I do that, I'll affirm that our space that we were to unlock in COVID was around vaccination. We were there and we were going to look to increase the participation rates of Māori in the COVID vaccination space. And in the cyclone, as that brought its ferocity here to our shores, that we would stand up and look to connect and have spaces of solace. So I'll traverse those two kaupapa. Before I do that, I'll embody the space of this notion of the thinking that enabled us to unlock the approach that I've just been speaking about. And there were 5 key things that stood out for us as a hauora or a health company that we would have as bottom lines. The first one was the space of obligation. Turanga Health is part of the 3 iwi, and we are tangata whenua of Turanga Nui a Kiwa. So as far as the kaitiaki or custodianship, it was upon us that we would be ready to take on this ngangana or this challenge around COVID, and that we would have the learnings of yesteryear of the previous generations to uphold, of all the activities that they had done, and also to protect the future generations that are yet to be here. So that was number 1 for us, the space of obligation. That didn't come from Wellington, didn't come from the council, it came inherently from the previous generations. The second was the space to be cognizant of those learnings of yesteryear. And if I was just to highlight a couple, the Spanish influenza, and its impact on Māori at that point in time. 2 key learnings that came up. One was around access. There was no access to any vaccine in the Spanish influenza. And the other one was faces, local faces and local spaces. And having that trust and confidence so we could nurture and get whānau to be connected. One of the other ones was around our Māori battalion, the C Company that fronted over World War II. And some of those key learnings around the preparedness for sacrifice. And the preparedness to have or demonstrate courage. So another good component of key learnings. And the third one was that, upon many others, cyclone bowler, and the space of preparedness around resilience, and the preparedness to do something, not to sit and not to wait, and to back ourselves in our own ingenuity of making things happen. The third one was around this notion of sagacious leadership, that we would have wise counsel that would steer us away from the quicksand, and would be courageous enough to take us to a space that not necessarily we wanted to go to, but we ought to be there. So this notion, the third component that would shift us into this design space. Fourth one was this notion of privilege. What a privilege to be at the forefront to service and service our own in our own community. The fourth and then the fifth was the audacity to be audacious, that the thinking that we would bring would be that audacious, that we could take head on this notion of the COVID and its global challenge and the cyclone. We had rolled our sleeves up and we were ready for a street fight. The audacity to be audacious does not come with a rule book. It comes with a preparedness to go into spaces of the unknown. And so to have a spine and to do those sorts of things, those were the 5 key components that we wanted the space to think, to then design, and then have the preparedness to decide. The trick then was, with all this theory, see a couple of academics. So as we translate the theory into pragmatism, so what? What are we prepared to do about this? So we devised our catch cry, which was all about local faces and local spaces embedded with local voices. That was what our catch cry was to be in Turanga Health as we were to face the COVID challenge and the cyclone as well. And we would underpin this with about 13 key sort of features. That our whole approach would be mobile, portable vaccinations. We would go anywhere, anytime in our backyard. Kaiwhina vaccinators, conscious of the faces and the spaces, we would back non-clinicians to be alongside clinicians to be prepared to vaccinate. Male, female, get them into the spaces, and have these trusted faces to be on the front line. System thinking. We would look at the system thinking so that we would have a architecture or a backroom that could be nimble and agile, that could be any time and in any day. We didn't want to be still chasing keys or chasing timesheets that inhibited our ability to be audacious. Workplace culture, the enthusiasm to be up every single day. There was a time there, we did 4 months, we never had a day off. It was Monday to Sunday. So to engineer a workplace culture where a smile from earlobe, from the left earlobe to the right earlobe, was on everybody's faces over that time frame. Whānau experience, that whatever we did wasn't just tailored for the individual, that there would be a whānau experience that was a great experience, and that they too would go back to their home or back to their settings to engineer a conversation with their whānau, that they too may pick up the mantle to come and be vaccinated. We didn't have everyone in total agreement. Our thing was, if we could generate 50% to come alongside, then we would have a conversation and we could go from there. That everything would be real time. It couldn't be about yesterday, it couldn't be about next week or last week. Things had to be real time. If we were to go, it had to be turned on. Whānau voice, we had to generate whānau voice so we could have real-time intelligence. So we could pivot. We didn't want to be playing in quicksand and consistently be in that sort of space. So whānau voice, as we generated the feedback, was to give us some intelligence so we could always improvise, always be in a space to pivot. Having the right instruments at our fingertips so that we could do the connection, we could manoeuvre weather, a lot of this Christchurch weather that's hit us today. We could just do the things that we were there to do. Celebrate success. The activity that we did we were in the trenches. Sometimes we had to pull our head out of the sand just to really recognise the effort that we were doing, whether it was from Munro Street, whether it was in Kaiti, the back of Matawai, in Muriwai, so we could understand and celebrate, give ourselves a high five and get ready for the next day. Virtual. This was not a space for New Zealand Post. This was a space around being connected, whether it was Facebook, whether it was Instagram, TikTok, all those sorts of things, and introduce that to this method of communication. Continuity, that every day was a new day, and that we could spread across us decision making. If I had got taken out or others had been taken out, that the next one in would still continue the momentum that we had. And then the preparedness to be all in. This wasn't about what we would ask of the team to do. Management would be there as well. What I expected others to do, I too had to be in that same sort of position. So we were all in. And those were our sort of key ingredients. So having that design, having the opportunity to apply a bit of ingenuity, the capacity or capability to think and to do the things that we were prepared to do in our backyard. And not wait on Wellington or not wait on Auckland to give us levels of prescription. And so the Turanga backyard, some sort of key messaging around some of our challenges and the things we have. What stands out around the demography, the isolation. All about our kaupapa, which I've just traversed. The preparedness to zoom in and zoom out. I spoke about the rule book. You had to turn that upside down, give it a good shake. As I said about a street fight, you can't take a 26 dot point flow chart to tell you what you're going to do in a street fight. You had to turn yourself upside down. If we were prepared to go and work on a Saturday or a Sunday, you didn't want to get tied down with someone chasing timesheets. And then a preparedness to zoom out and look at the environment, having the relationships and the things that we were prepared to do. We ended up using 78 backyard settings in Gisborne and Turanganuiakiwa when we did our mobile vaccinations. From Matawai through to Muriwai, shearing sheds, broccoli paddocks, parks and reserves, you name it, we had it. Not the static settings, Harry Barker Reserve, the Poverty Bay Rugby Ground, 78 settings, our preparedness to go to where the whānau were. And some of the data sets that we had fronted up with, so that we could, outside of doing the things that we did in the method space, that we also wanted to acknowledge the measurement space. So we could see what difference we were making, and if we needed to reset for the next day or the next week ahead, how this information would guide us to chop and change. And so we had 12 kaiwhena vaccinators. Total vaccinations that we ended up doing was just over 20,000. 10,000 of those were done by our non-clinical team, who were basically rolled the sleeves up and we were in. We were the first in New Zealand to get their team through. Us in our backyard here in Gisborne. Double loop learning. So anything that we were able to unlock in that system space, we wanted it not just so that it stayed on a shelf looking good, but we needed to recycle those learnings so that we could learn from it and then reset ourselves. And then our reflections, that potentially what we could reflect on would guide and direct us as things may manoeuvre or things may transpire. Unbeknown to us, the cyclone. Really, for us, it was outside of the experience of the cyclone, deja vu. Everything that I had spoken about, bang, we were able to put in place. And here we are. On the 13th it struck, Turanga Health was able to open on the 14th. We were there. And of us in the sort of auditorium will understand around the 6 days of no connectivity, no banking, 2 days no power, but a preparedness to do stuff, turn up and make things happen. Again, that double loop learning, everything that we learned from the COVID, we were able to put into the response to Cyclone Gabriel. The response for Cyclone, this was all about the people. Exactly the same for COVID, all about people, not about bricks and mortar, not about just looking at stats. This was people with people, for the people. And then just some transactional activity or the things that we actually got to do and what we unlocked. So we didn't sit on the sidelines watching with a pair of binoculars. We actually got in there and we made things happen. Some key sorts of things there that we're able to do. As you see them on there, quickly running out of time. But a preparedness, not to sit and wait, preparedness to do things. Whether it was the looking at communication, engineering, mobile barbecues, et cetera, et cetera. That's the activity that we were able to turn on. Again, key reflections, whānau, connection, and solace, a place of solace. So whānau could come, share their experience, and get back on the horse. Not a good majority of us. We had anxiety, but the ability to share their kōrero and tell their story with others, that was the sweet spot. And so our congruent reflections, bringing them together between the cyclone and COVID for Turanga Health, so that now resets us and moving forward. Whānau experience, the virtues was a key one for us. Anything that we would do, the virtues were still at the forefront. That we would love people, that we would respect people, and that we would be gracious with people. We'd be ruthless with the standard, but we would be gracious with our own. And then the so what and moving forward from the experience of the cyclone and COVID, more mobility of the approach, keep the foot on the accelerator in that sort of space. And second is around evolving a culture that potentially, as the new recruits come through for health activity, clinicians or so forth, that we could take advantage of a different approach other than sitting behind a desk. It could be mobile, we could be in the city, and we could be in the rural. So 2 key learnings of the so what space. That brings my kōrero to a close. Kia ora tātou.